like to join me in the acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that we're meeting on the ancestral land of the Ngunnawal people. I recognise the Ngunnawal as the traditional custodians and pay my respects to the elders of the community and their descendants. A prayer. Let us be still and remember the presence of God as we commence our meeting, and let us together pray for guidance and help. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations for the true welfare of Australia and the people of Yass Valley. Amen. Thank you. No apologies. We seem to have a full house tonight. Any declarations? Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll make a non-declaration. There are some items related to the Yass and District Historical Society coming up later on in the confidential reports, which is implicated. On the 10th of October, I stood down as president of that organisation, and I'm no longer on that committee. Therefore, I will not be seeking to leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Oh, thank you.
Any other declarations? Any special disclosures? Minutes have been circulated. Someone like to move the adoption of the minutes? Councillor Burgess, Councillor Abbey, any questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declared motion carried. Mural minute, there's none. 6.1 Wee Jasper Main Street Master Plan.
Through you, Mr Mayor, happy to move the recommendation as listed in the business paper.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Reid. Any discussion? Any comments?
I'd just like to commend both the community for their input and also our staff for their diligence in this project. It seemed to be a more complicated master plan than even the book one. So if I could just have a few comments from the director.
We're very pleased, through you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased to be able to present this to the council for adoption. We've had some very productive consultation and conversations with the community of Wee Jasper, and I think we should congratulate them on their willingness to come forward and provide their ideas back to the council, and hopefully we'll be able to track some grants to undertake the work, and I think commend the work of the Manager of Strategic Planning that she has done on this particular project.
Any other questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declared carried. 6.2 Climate Change Action Plan. There is a recommendation.
Just a moment.
Someone like to make? Councillor Puffin? We have a seconder? Councillor Reid? Councillor Cameron?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just ask a question. The action plan, has it been handed out?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's an attachment to the council report.
Do you mean to the community or to us?
To us, first of all, and
Yes.
to the community. Sorry, I didn't catch it there. Okay. I've got an amendment coming up, please, to consider. Sorry, it's a bit of a long amendment.
Wow.
You want me to read it out?
That'd be a good idea.
All right, okay, there's 4 points to it. The item be held over until the December meeting, given that the Climate Change Action Plan has not been made publicly available on the website. The business paper report be updated to address whether council's insurer's opinion on the adequacy of the plan has been sought and obtained, given the insurer's requirement that such a plan be developed. So we're sort of asking for feedback there. Thirdly, the business paper report considers and advises whether the plan needs to be updated in light of the experiences and learnings from the August 2022 floods. And the plan be referred to the November meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Committee for its consideration and comments prior to being brought back to council.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think the business paper's been published. You don't update the business paper, you would call for another report for a future meeting.
Right.
What's published is published.
Okay. So I'll change that. That's the item.
So you just said something along the line that a future
Needs to be updated in light of the experiences.
report to council being updated in light of the insurer's opinion.
That can be changed. Be suitable wording. Okay. Moved and seconded. Yeah.
We got a seconder?
I don't know whether I have a seconder yet.
I'm not quite certain what we're talking about.
Yes.
We've just said that the climate change action plan has been noted. How can we amend that in some way and defer it? How can we note it and then hold it over to December meeting? This is a totally different motion, so that's my point. Yeah. So,
Okay, well, I'll change it to a foreshadowed motion.
okay, yeah.
I'll ask the Chief Executive Officer.
It's not quite as good from my point of view, but it's a foreshadowed motion. So if the original motion doesn't get up, then we can have a discussion about this one.
Oh, yeah, we can, but there might be a simpler way of doing it.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think foreshadowed motion is probably the best way because
Yeah.
it's different, significantly different to the what's been moved and seconded, which is simply to note the report. So yeah, I think a foreshadowed motion would be the safest way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones?
You don't need one.
No.
No, foreshadowed motions, no, not unless the first motion is defeated and then councillor Cameron has the floor and you would then need to seek a seconder for that at that time.
Okay, so we'll have debate on the original motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I could rise to support the motion as it stands in the business paper. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Adrian Cameron for his consistent and ever-present zeal for transparency and communication with the public. However, this is an operational document. This is for our internal workings to do as much as we can for climate action. It's not a functional document for the community to use or to guide them, it's to guide us. Having said that, the community can always make comment on these documents to us as councillors at any time, and it's been up in the business paper for both us and the community to observe. I think there are some wonderful facts in this document that we might choose to communicate what we're doing, and that will be a good thing for our, for us as a council organisation. But the thrust of this document is for us to run our business in a way that is conscious of the effects of climate change.
Speakers against? Councillor Cameron.
Okay, I'm not sure of your arguments there because I think in the comments that were made in regard to this recommendation that this be noted, the comment was sort of made that we want to demonstrate to the public what we're doing in regard to climate action. Now, the issue of climate action, there are quite a number of people who think that we are facing a climate emergency. And some people, a lot of people in the Yass Valley would be thinking that. And they would be saying to us as councillors, what are you doing? And this document is supposedly doing that. So I don't see it only as an operational document. It's not. It's basically saying to the public what we are trying to implement in regard to climate action. Okay, so I think you're blurring it a little bit there too much. I think it's definitely aimed at the public. It says that in the comments about the recommendation, that it is basically trying to tell the public what we're trying to do and also where we're trying to head. Now, my argument against this at the moment, to some extent, is that there's no timeline there. We're just noting it. And I wonder, as we go through this set of business papers, the word noted is used quite a lot. And I was trying to look up a good definition of noted, and I can't find a really good one. But the explanation of noted seems to vary depending on where you're aiming to head with a particular motion. So I'm sort of saying that I don't think it's just operational. I think it's basically trying to tell the public what we're on about. And if I cut to the chase, I believe that I don't think we're on enough quickly enough. And I think we need to be upfront about that to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Camerons. Any other speakers? Support of the motion? Or against? Prepared to vote? Motion, all those in favour? Those against? Councillor Cameron. I declare the motion carried. Six three, variations to development standards, quarterly report. There's a recommendation that it be noted.
Notwithstanding Mr Cameron's, Councillor Cameron's comment about the noted, I'll note that it's been noted.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder?
Could you explain that, please?
Councillor Potham, any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Six four, development application, dwelling house, Kears Road, Murrum Bateman. There is a report and a recommendation. Someone like to move the recommendation?
So move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Turner, do we have a seconder? Councillor Reid, any discussion? Any questions?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Our wine industry has been around since the 70s, thanks to some pioneers such as Ken Helm here in the room with us today. I've watched us as a council in my very first term make some tough decisions about whether we would open up land to subdivision around the vineyards. And it was a very tight vote. I think it was 5-4 on the night, in favour of ensuring that land was preserved for our wine industry there, because we were all up against it. We were receiving so many complaints in terms of the mechanisms that were being used to scare away birds. When I first got on to council, the lack of water was an issue. The birds were landing on, there was just so much having to be done to protect the grapes out there. Ironically, we turn around and we've got kind of the opposite weather at the moment. But it's very firm in my mind that we do need to protect this industry. It brings so many opportunities for our community. And this kind of step seems like a small one, but if it opens up more conflict into this area, I don't think that's a good thing for either the residents who find themselves in that position or our industry members who are, trying to produce premium wine and put us on the map. It's a tough gig. They've had so many years of challenges. I don't think we need to unnecessarily make their job harder. I think this is a precedent that we don't want to see occur throughout Yass Valley, so I support the recommendation of the business paper.
Thank you, councillor Jones. Any speakers against? Prepared to vote?
If I may
Councillor
close the
Bannon?
debate. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've made it a general principle in my life in council to take the recommendation of the senior staff. I commend the staff on this particular report. There have been occasions where I've gone against their recommendation, but there have been some very strong and important reasons for so doing. I believe the integrity of RU1 has to be preserved here throughout the whole of the valley. There may well be, and I feel sorry for Mr Haskins, who's found a lovely place to live, and he's now not going to be allowed to live there. However, it is really important that we don't have people running around the district looking for small blocks to buy for their lifestyles. And it is really important that this one, the integrity of RU1 for the sake of agriculture and particularly for the wine industry, be kept intact throughout Murrumbidgee and the rest of the valley.
Thank you, councillor Turner. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. 6.5 development application, Crago Mill precinct. There is a recommendation. Thank you very much, councillor Jones. Councillor Reid, seconded. Any discussion? Any comments?
Just a quick comment to say that I think with zeal, we commend this development application up to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in November, and we hope Queanbeyan and Palorine Regional Council, on behalf of us, do a good job and keep this through really fast for us. It's a very exciting proposal. It's, you know, an intergenerational change for Yass Valley to see this kind of project go forward. I note some of the submissions on it. Some were very practical decisions about let's not put our bins next to our neighbours, which I think is good advice. I also note some comments that some people thought that the design was nice but not very exciting. Well, I beg to differ. This is about the most exciting thing we'll ever get to do as a community, to create community spaces, to bring a library into fruition that Yass Valley has never seen before, places for our community to meet, the restoration of a place where people came in Yass Valley to grind their grain into bread and talk and, you know, discuss issues. You know, I can't remember how many years it is ago now, but it's just, it's an exciting prospect, and we have carriage of this project. Some of the design elements reflect where we live, reflect the river. I think the nuance of that will come out when people see the building going up, which I can't wait to see happen.
Yeah. 4-4. Yeah, no, it's a transformational exercise, yes, councillor Abbott.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just like to add to what Councillor Jones said and just make a comment that it is a very exciting project, and it's looking forward to the community environment to be created there, and certainly an exciting new library amongst other things. And also for what is a large project, it's a signature project there. It's noted that there weren't a lot of submissions that were against the project, so I think that rather augurs well and bodes well.
Thank you, councillor Abbott. No further comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Cameron, did you vote for it?
I think so.
Thanks very much. I'll declare the motion carried.
Take the video.
Unanimously. I'll have those all vote.
Video replay.
Okay, item 6.6, development application, manufactured dwelling, 29 Camden Street, Vinyl. There is a recommendation. Councillor Potham, seconded. Councillor Jones. Too slow, Councillor Root. Any discussion? Any questions?
Through you.
Councillor Raby?
Just like to make a couple of comments. I noticed that it was on a public exhibition. I'm quite surprised that there were no submissions. I find it to be not a particularly attractive looking dwelling, and it's hardly could be considered a bespoke addition to the Vinalong community. So I find it somewhat of an eyesore, and I really am a little concerned that it could be viewed as a rather unsavoury precedent to be be undertaken if the dwelling is allowed to go ahead as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Abbey, so you were speaking against the
Yes.
recommendation. Do you have any comments, Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The development application was presented to council at the July meeting and it was the decision to, it was recommended for refusal and the decision of council was to defer it and bring it back to the September meeting. We've obviously had some discussions with the applicant since the July meeting and she has proposed the changes that are outlined in the report. There were no submissions made in the first round of exhibition, so we didn't exhibit for a second time on that basis. And ultimately, it's a decision for council.
Thank you, Director.
Just a question to the Director of Planning, thank you, through the General Manager. Julie, do we as a council have the right to reject houses on the basis that we don't like the look of? As I mentioned before, there's a lot of houses around that I don't like the look of. And I suppose what I'm getting at is, has this person crossed all the T's and dotted the I's as far as planning and getting the right permissions to put this dwelling in place?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the dwelling has been placed on the land without an approval. So it currently stands, it's an illegal dwelling. And that was addressed definitely in the first report that came to council in July. Look, there's an assessment provided attached to this council report under section 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. And we've provided our comments around the suitability of the dwelling for the site, the impacts. Look, it is a form of housing. It's a form of housing, it's a form of low cost housing, I would say, like it's a manufactured dwelling. They come in all sorts of styles. This is a particular type that this person has selected. Look, really, I do feel it's a decision for council. We've put forward a recommendation that we believe it can be approved. And look, all I can do is really refer you to the assessment that's been completed in the report.
Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is that there were no objections from neighbours.
Yes,
Is that the
there was, through you, Mr Ben, Councillor Cameron, no, there were no submissions received when we notified it in the first round.
All right.
Yeah, we didn't notify it for a second time when she
No,
made
that's
the
fine,
changes.
that's fine, I'm just seeing what the neighbours thought.
Councillor Jones.
Through you, Mr Mayor. It's important to note that while that's a reasonably large block and
Sorry.
and the building is very basic. There's only, so many building entitlements per block, and so you're not going to see 10 of these on one block. That's not allowable. So the impact of this is very low impact. And the road reserve, I think, reflects, the comment reflected in the report shows that the road reserve gives a lot of grace around the fact that it's very hard up against one edge. We need to understand that, budgets come in all sizes for housing, and it's tough out there. It's incredibly tough. Many young people, I know, cannot get a start in the Yass Valley and have had to go abroad, which means families don't stay together. And we have, very vulnerable community members of our community, certain age groups, certain genders combined with age groups, and we have to be looking for solutions. In fact, this council has a draft affordable housing strategy in its processes. So while I share Councillor Abbey's view that this is not what we want as a suburb. I think we can tolerate this within the context of one building entitlement on one block with a lot of greenery around.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just on that, if you want to have a say about design of houses, if you want to get involved in that, you need some guidelines. you don't have them, only other than in heritage areas, where there are some prescribed guidelines for infill development or appropriate extensions. This is not one of those areas. So it's a permissible use. It might not be to all our tastes, but the design of buildings is in the eye of the beholder. If the applicant likes it, there's not much we can do about it, unfortunately.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions to the director concerns the standard conditions. If I'm correct in thinking the only variation from the standard condition is work for the deck, awning and footings must not commence until a construction certificate has been issued. Is that the only specific, site-specific one, or is it just a stock standard?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a condition on there relating to landscaping.
If you'd like to please explain what the specifics are of the variation,
No, I'll just.
because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, no, it is, through you, Mr. Mayor, it is in there because I read it when I was,
I have no doubt it's in there.
yes, it is in there. The requirement would be that they would submit the landscaping plan to council for approval, and then they would be expected to complete the landscaping prior to an occupation certificate being issued. Thank you. So the landscaping is the primary and secondary frontage of the property, and they also have to provide details of the location of the rainwater tank. So we will get to see the landscaping plan again. Obviously, there is issues around the fact that the dwelling is already there, but they still need to legalise the dwelling, not just through a development consent, but also through a construction certificate. And there are some matters that get dealt with under the Local Government Act as well.
Prepare to vote. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Abbey, against? I declare the motion carried. 6.7, planning and environment compliance matters. There is also a recommendation that the report be noted. I'd like to move.
Acknowledge it or noted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbey. Councillor Potter, any questions? Councillor Cameron, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think compliance matters are extremely important. I'm still getting people talking about the lack of compliance or taking action about inappropriate actions. For example, I have a resident in the Wallaroo area talking about ongoing dumping, and ongoing dumping seems to be happening on a fairly continual basis. And this particular resident was contacting the council in May and not ultimately satisfied that the compliance management was being kept continuing basically, and she came to me to raise the matter. I directed an email to the Director of Planning and Environment on the 19th of October and have not yet received a response. And I would think that that's partly because we don't have enough people doing the actual compliance project. So I think the idea of noting this one with the intention that this goes forward and to the review and then being accepted is quite reasonable. But the question I have is, I think the report states the investigations have been underway for over 12 months, yet the additional 100,000 which will be sought in the upcoming budget review was not identified as necessary or probable requirement in the budget deliberations. Can we have an explanation, please, for this oversight? Because it looks like it was underestimated by a fairly big margin by the look of it.
Yeah, you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cameron, I reject that it's actually an oversight. So at the commencement of the investigation, we couldn't foresee that we would find ourselves in this situation with this particular matter that we would need to take it to the local court. we always work on the principle of compliance through cooperation. That is our first port of call. However, in this case, we haven't been able to gain the cooperation of the landowner, and as such, we are taking it to the local court to get them to comply with the notices that have been issued. So I don't agree that it's an oversight, but we need to move forward with compliance generally in the Yass Valley, and I can give council an undertaking that I will be requesting a much larger legal cost budget in 23-24.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to congratulate the compliance team, and I think I've seen a lot of positive stuff happening with compliance recently, and I know there was a situation that came up in Murray Bateman and the compliance team it's about going through the process. With compliance, you don't just walk up and slap someone with a fine. It's about communication and giving people a chance, both sides get a chance to talk about what's happening and to rectify a problem. And so I think the compliance team has done an amazing job, and everything that we take further does set an example and a precedence, and I can appreciate how difficult it would be to compliance everything going on. It's a big valley we've got, and a lot of people not necessarily doing the right thing, so it is a hard thing to mandate, but from what I've seen with my own eyes, I'd like to congratulate the team on a really great job. So.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning and Environment. Just if you could just elaborate on something in the business papers that indicates that you've estimated that compliance matters would rise by a magnitude of about 20% in this the rest of this financial year. Can you just flesh it out a bit as to how you got to that figure of 20%?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just basically lining up. We keep figures across each month in each financial year. So we're just aligning the compliance matters from 21-22 for the first quarter of that financial year with what we're seeing in 22-23. So that's how we're making that estimation. Just as a side note, see the number of compliance matters, it's just not illegal filling or illegal dwellings or anything like that. It also takes in matters around companion animals. And what we have noticed is that people are now returning back to the offices after a period of time at home during COVID. So they're there with their pets, and we're seeing an increase in the companion animal compliance issues that we're dealing with. So overall, we're expecting an increase of around 20%.
Everyone happy? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.8, the gas water treatment plant update. Further reports be noted. Councillor Reeves. Moved. We have a seconder. Councillor Turner. Any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
So I just wanted to check in with our director in regards to, and while I appreciate these documents have to be prepared, almost 2 weeks or more out, I'm always optimistic and keen to learn whether there has been any shift in the condition that we wait 12 months after the completion of stage 1, which subsequently takes us past the state government election, in which we can no longer say to the state government, by the way, will you actually deliver on your promise, which was, and if you all remember the words, you can say it with me, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes were the words that we were told. First it was a $5 million commitment from Ursula Stevens from Labor, then it was 10 from Prue Goward, Wendy Tuckerman duo team during that election, and then it was matched by Labor, and the Liberal coalition said, hands in the air, whatever it takes. Well, so far we've told them that I think it's approximately $38 million. That's what it's going to take to get this job done right for our valley. We have a 1950s and then spruced up in the 1990s sandpit eight trap sandpit, which is what's providing us with the raw material, which we then see our staff do something worthy of the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter book 8 or something. So what I'd like to know is, has there been any shift? And I thoroughly endorse the next steps in our noting report, which says continue to lobby for like no timeline on the continuation of funding and operation of stage 2 and 3.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
That was a long question.
I can inform councillors that I actually met with the Minister for Water last Wednesday. I'd be interested to know that the promise of whatever it takes was never a promise. So that was the comment that was made to me. I did remind the Minister that that was the comment that was made during the election, and that I said, can we just put that aside for a minute? Because the issue we have at the moment is that we have effectively done stage 1, but with the that facility works well in normal conditions, and guess what? We don't have normal conditions at the moment. We're getting masses of water coming down into the dam, and any evaluation over the next 12 months is going to be worthless. It's not going to inform stages 2 and 3 of this particular project. So I pointed that out to the Minister. I said, what we want to do is we want to get on and get the designs at least finalised for stages 2 and 3, so that we then know better what the actual value of the work is going to be for those 2 stages. So I put that to him. He said, you've got $10 million, and I said, yes, that's right, but we can't use that money at this point in time because the department doesn't agree with that we should proceed to the design, and the funding body, which is a different entity, says we have to have the Office of Water tick off before we release the money. So we're still a bit of a stalemate. What the Minister did tell me, he said, so really what you're saying to me is that you want the Yass Valley community wants us to let you get on with your lives. And I said, exactly. So he's undertaken to talk to the people in the department that are looking after basically our contact team that we have in there, and he gave an undertaking that he would raise the issue and say, let the community get on with doing what they need to do. He did preface that by saying, I don't know how successful I will be, but he did give the undertaking that he would actually talk to the senior decision makers in that team to see if we could actually get past this impasse. In the meantime, as per the report, Director of Infrastructure and Assets has actually looked at perhaps a halfway step to actually get some more matters addressed, particularly the ones that relate to where we've already got notices from WorkSafe and EPA to actually deal with some of those particular issues, but hopefully that they will fit in with the ultimate design that we've said. So that's the absolute latest of where we're up to with this. I wait with bated breath. I will certainly, if we do get the green light to go ahead with the next stage, I think it is appropriate that council probably remind them of the promise that they made at the last election, particularly if they're returned. And perhaps we need to mention it to the opposition in case they do get in, that this promise was made to the Yass Valley community, and certainly if we don't deliver, I think that will be another failing of government to fulfil the promises that they make at an election. So I think we'll just wait and see. I'll give it 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll just see what the response is going to be.
I think we've been the recipient of enough broken promises. Probably started swinging the big stick, I reckon. Yeah, yes, Councillor Jones.
I'm just conscious I'll close the debate myself.
Further comments?
I will say something. I just want to thank our general manager. It's not an easy thing as a public servant to go in with the big stick. Thank you for taking the big stick, and I'm sure you wielded it as gently as you could. So, well done.
You did a bit of a grilling.
You've been talking to the department. That's a step.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. 6.9, water source strategy. There is a recommendation.
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Turner. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Abbey. Any questions, any comments? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, just a couple of questions or maybe a comment. A legacy project, could we define what a legacy project is, General Manager, through you, Mr Mayor? Thank you.
Through you, the report actually says that if we were to forego the administration of the Parkwood area, along with any rate revenues from that area, by moving the ACT New South Wales border, I've indicated that I believe there should be a correspondency legacy project so that the rest of Yass Valley is not disadvantaged by the loss of that area. And that the water supply pipeline that was identified in this report be that legacy project.
Another question. So the legacy project is that we are given a pipeline.
Correct.
Correct. So that's the legacy project.
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea would be is that we because we are not party, we have no status in the negotiations of moving the border. That's a territory New South Wales Commonwealth arrangement. We don't have a seat at the table. We just want to bully our way to the table and just basically say, look, if you want our agreement, this is what we reckon we need. And there's now a study that basically says that if we're expecting the growth that we believe through our settlement strategy, we need an alternate water supply. If climate change happens, the amount of water that we have at the present time would probably not provide a secure water supply for the growth areas that we've identified. And that then begs the question about whether we should then be releasing land for growth when we don't have the basic water supply to be able to support that. What that would mean is if we had to rely solely on the Yass water supply for that, is that we are likely to see more restrictions more often, and that will be a deterrent in terms of people wanting to move here and wanting to develop land. So the Yass settlement strategy and the subsequent local strategic planning statement both identified that an alternate water supply was necessary if we were to realise the growth, and this report basically gives us that solution. It says that here's all the ones that we've evaluated. The best solution for Yass Valley is Canberra water to Murrum Bateman. The good news about that then is that there is the opportunity in an emergency situation where we could transfer the water from Murrum Bateman to Yass if we ever ran out of water in Yass back here. So we've now got a report that we can actually put under the nose of the politicians to say we're very clear about what we want.
Yeah, can I make a comment? Okay. Look, I always like to be optimistic. I think I'm going to win Tatslotto tonight, but probably not. I have taken a ticket, like probably millions of others. But I just wonder, are we being too optimistic here? And the concern that I have is we don't seem to have a plan B. I'm not sure what plan B would be. Like, I know there's a list of other suggestions, whether it's Barranjak or whether it's something else, or more water tanks, etc. But we don't seem to have a plan B, that we're we're really betting everything on this legacy project, and I wonder whether we're being too optimistic. And the reason why I say that is because Andrew Barr made it clear when he was talking about the border change. We've paid for the land, he said. There's no further cost for ACT ratepayers. Well, I would imagine the pipeline, $30-40 million? There would seem to be a cost. So he's saying that he doesn't see any obligation. Now, I know there's negotiations, but they can come back to us and basically say, I don't think we've got a strong hand in regard to negotiations. We've basically already said that, we're foregoing rate revenue, but we've also said that it's very, very difficult for us to service that community. And you could basically argue that the rate revenue would be cancelled out by whatever strategy we would come up with to service that particular community. So I don't think we're in a really strong sort of position. I think we should be looking at how can we encourage the Yass Valley people, residents, to basically reduce their water use in lots of different ways, our education programs, even the fact that, and I've had a number of people say to me, why don't we have on our water bills how much water we're using compared to, one person, two person, etc., like you can have with electricity. And I think we did have that sort of indication previously. I'm just saying, I'm raising a note of caution that basically, we've got everything on the line on this legacy project, and I'm not sure it's going to be delivered. Maybe you're more optimistic talking to some of the New South Wales, particularly politicians, in regard to the cross-border issue. I'm not so sure.
Through Mr. Mayor, look, if the border isn't moved,
Yeah.
we don't get a pipeline.
Yeah.
We don't have any chance of a pipeline. All the other options don't deliver with the forecasted growth that we're expecting. Using Barnjuck, if we can use it, if we could use it, would be significantly higher because of the need for pumping, whereas from Canberra we don't need anywhere near as much pumping. So there would be increased operational costs looking at the other sources of water, and that's why they were discounted as alternatives.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm optimistic, but I think that we should be going to the negotiating table and saying, this is what we want.
Yeah.
It's a simple solution. It's the most beneficial for, not only for Yass Valley. Remember, most of the people that are moving into Yass Valley are Canberra refugees moving into our area, and their expectations are certainly very different to most of the people around this table.
I'll learn.
Some of them don't. But look, put that aside, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're to achieve the development growth that we've forecasted, we need an alternate water supply which is secure. Some of the other options are not as secure as we think. So even as a plan B, not good enough. My advice to you, if we don't secure a pipeline one way or another, then we've got to turn around and go back to all our plans for growth and say we cannot do this. We cannot do this. Now the community has, one of the very few times in my planning career where the community has been very, very supportive of the settlement strategy and the way that we've been talking about growth and the challenges facing that. That's almost unheard of in lots of other places I've worked at. And so I think we've got the good foundations. People know what we're after. Here's an opportunity to put something on the table and go hard at it. Now, if we fail, we fail. And we have to think of plan B then. But my view at this stage is I wouldn't be talking about a plan B until we've exhausted the opportunities on plan A.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Turner next.
We've done this before. We've done this to Murrumbidgee, and that was a three-way funded project. Us, the state government and the federal government, which made it an achievable prospect for us to do. Having said that, the ratepayers of Yass are part of that subsidising process. So we helped get that to Murrumbateman so that we could have more water users in order to carry the load going forward. So yes, Yass residents did subsidise to some extent bringing water to Murrumbateman, but that's also true of Bowning and Bynalong. So it's an evolution that as you bring more users on, and I'm sure that Canberra will be using that same methodology when they think about bringing on the users here in the Yass Valley. It's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that we still need our own supply here for security, and we still need a highly functioning water treatment plant. It's no good just to say we're going to get all our water from Canberra, so why do we need to treat it? We actually do need our own supply as well. What are our bargaining chips for this process? It's no small thing to say that we can get a special rate variation. So we will have to extract what it takes to deliver the services for those Canberra refugees that are just across the border expecting the same standards that they can see across the road. 10,000 homes is no small thing to give up in perpetuity in terms of rates, not just for us, but also for the New South Wales government in terms of taxes. We have chips on the table. Whether or not we have a seat is another question, but we'll be trying our best to look like high rollers in the room. That's it very well. Answer well. As your member on the Gin and Dairy Conservation Trust, I can tell you that this is a beautiful area that has so much going for it that its intention is to bring a very large amount of tourists into that area to open up the Gin and Dairy Falls, to do lots of environmental works to protect that area. So this will be a jewel in the crown for Yass Valley if the border is not moved. This is a beautiful area for which we can lay claim. However, the legacy project here, I believe, is a worthy trade in terms of securing water for all of Yass Valley, to allow Murrumbateman to grow, to allow Yass to grow as well. And the plan B is in your settlement strategy. We revert to a different style of more rural res, where we were going to build lots of urban infill here in Yass and Murrumbateman as a greenfield site. So it's in your plan, it's in your settlement strategy what we would do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
I was incredibly excited to see this on the agenda today. I've been talking about how we would get water to Murrumbateman for many, many years now. So I feel incredibly grateful to be stood here as a councillor now with this item on the agenda. Just in a nutshell, I wanted to clarify what we're talking about is trading land for a pipeline. That's kind of that simple, that we will give this land and then you will build us a pipeline for however much money it costs. Has there been any forward thinking into the financial implications on the residents of Yass Valley at this point in terms of the upkeep of this pipeline, how much it'll cost, what would the rates look like after this is built? Keeping in mind I'm fully supportive of this, but I just thought that was a worthy question because I couldn't really see any further, and I understand that we probably don't know all the ins and outs of that at the moment, but if we could get some general understanding, that would be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have done a little bit of work on it. It sort of depends on who is the water authority for the pipeline. If it's, let's say, Icon Water, then we don't have to look after the asset or anything like that. But no doubt, if they're looking after the asset, they'll be setting the pricing to make sure that they can actually maintain it and manage the asset and replace it in due course if need be. If we're the water authority, so there's a meter on the border, and we pay for the water that comes through the pipeline, and the pipe is our asset, then that becomes part of our water assets in our water portfolio, and we would continue to be a water authority for the whole of for Yass Valley. So there's a number of different challenges. The biggest challenge is not so much the pipeline and the cost of that. I'm fairly comfortable with that arrangement. There's been plenty of pipelines that have been built between different communities, and the cost of those pipelines and the cost of the water from those pipelines has been fairly reasonable. The challenge for us is that if we hang on to Parkwood, the challenge there is that we will need to raise monies probably on par with the ACT government. If we do that and we don't have any special rate variation, that means the rates have to come down in the rest of the LGA because of rate pegging. And that means that there will be inevitably a decline in services to the rest of Yass Valley, which is against the fundamental principle that Council had right from the word go, is that Yass Valley residents should not be disadvantaged by this project. So that would be a major disadvantage. The other thing is that special rate variations are not given out by IPART forever. They're given for 2 to 5 years. And if you ask for a 10% special rate variation, you might get 7.5. So then there's a gap. And if the rates continue to increase in the ACT and ours lag for whatever reason, we're at a disadvantage, because that means the rest of the ratepayers are going to have to make up the difference to pay for the services coming from the ACT. So it is a big financial risk in my mind for us to try and manage cross-border issues. I can tell you now, I reckon I need 10 more public servants to manage the special rate variation requirement, plus the contracts for service arrangement and the monitoring of those contracts. And we know what sometimes when you're outsourcing things that they don't always go to plan, so there will be probably a decent legal bill that goes with it as well. So I think that all of that disadvantages from a financial perspective what it would be. So the idea of foregoing, yes, it's a lot of money foregoing for that, but it does mean that we don't have to pay for the services because they're no longer our services. They become the ACT services, and it becomes their problem and how they actually manage that locality. So that's why when we've talked about cross-border agreements, there are high levels of risk to this council in going down that track. The suggestion was by council a number of years ago was let's explore the idea of moving the border as a way of solving this problem. We've actually done that. We found that it's not that, in theory, it's not that difficult. It only needs 3 signatures, a Premier, Prime Minister and a Chief Minister. New South Wales gives the land up to the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth then cedes the land back to the ACT so that it becomes part of the ACT. Everything that happens in that area is now the ACT, will now be the ACT problem under that arrangement. For us, if we had to maintain it, we've got to drive into Canberra and then drive out again to service that area. So does that mean we need another garbage team out there? Do we need a customer service officer? Do we need to send the planners and the parks people out there? Do we need a depot there? So all of these then become extra costs on us in terms of being able to service that area. So I think the elegantly simple solution is move the border, but I don't think we should give it up easily. I think we should be saying, this is what we want. This is what we need, and it will benefit the rest of the ratepayers that remain in Yass Valley forever and a day.
So if it goes ahead and everything's signed, sealed and delivered, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, could ratepayers suddenly see an increase of, $1,000 a year, per annum in their rates? And, if it doesn't go ahead, could ratepayers still see some sort of increase because of the offset of that? I suppose I just would like that a bit more clarified.
The rates don't go up.
Okay,
So the rates that we get from the properties that remain in Yass Valley remain whatever they are, under whatever rules that New South Wales apply. And we've been doing it many years under rate pegging. But that wouldn't significantly go up unless there was the government allowed a special rate variation to go ahead. Now, we had a special rate variation that's come to an end. we might need one in the future, but that's another debate that we would have separately. The issue for us we wouldn't be burdened with a parcel of land that we're responsible for maintaining, but we have to drive into another state territory to actually get to it, and then duplicate services that we run out of here in Murrumbidgee, and having a third place to run the services out of, a large community of whatever it is, 15,000 people. So it does make sense. It is, in my mind, elegantly simple. It's just the political will. Is there the political will? And I think the recent announcement by the New South Wales Premier and the Territory, the Chief Minister of the Territory, have been very promising in terms of, yes, it's something that we're prepared to look at. We get it. You've got to remember as well that the state services that are run in that area, policing, ambulance, fire, how are they going to service them in that area? Are they going to pay the ACT, is the state government going to pay the ACT government for the ACT fire brigade to come across the border and put the fire out? For the police to come across the border and police it as though it's the ACT? At the moment, they can, but they have to hold the perpetrator until the cavalry arrive from Queanbeyan or Yass. So there are implications for the state. I don't think they've actually looked at it, but if they do look at it, I think what you'll find is that they'll come to the conclusion very quickly, like we did, to say, you know what, it's not worth it. Why do I need to pay more state government money and more local government money from New South Wales into the ACT just for services that they're going to provide any?
Okay.
So I'm not worried about the impact on the rates. Water charges are different. It'll depend on what the charge is at the border in terms of what. But we've got, water's not constrained at the present time with rate, like we've got with rate pegging on our general rates. It's a utility, so they've got to put forward a plan every so many years to IPART to say this is what we plan to do, this is what we need, this is the revenue we need, this is how it would impact on bills, and IPART whether they're going to agree with that or not. So it's a separate charge, just like we have separate electricity bills, whereas the general rate is really for running everything else other than the water and sewer.
When Councillor Jones was speaking on the matter where the residents of, Yass helped to pay for this pipeline from Yass to Murrumbidgee, I suppose that's what I was getting at as well, would that come into the arrangement somewhere like that, with this pipeline? Would we suddenly be seeing people in Yass paying for the privilege of having water pretty well just to Murrumbidgee?
No, because we can, the way the pipeline to Murrumbidgee has been designed is that it can push water both ways. So what it does is give Yass some level of security in the times when it has no water or very little water. There is the opportunity to shift more water from Murrumbidgee for an emergency supply for Yass, which is better than having no supply. So there's benefits to us in having a pipeline from Canberra to Murrumbidgee. We've already had the foresight and, thanks to the water team and the engineers that designed it so it can pump both ways. That's given us the opportunity to not only secure water for Murrumbidgee, but to provide an emergency supply for Yass and consequently Bounding and Bynalong.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for your detailed response.
I think it's probably worth noting too that all of Queanbeyan's water comes from the ACT, and their water rates are comparable to the ACT's rates. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the risk of prolonging this discussion longer than it needs to be taken.
it's a big issue.
It is a very big
We're
issue.
not noting it.
And it has been there for a very, very, very long time. In my lifetime, we have looked at options A, B, C, and D. So far afield as a nice dam at Devil's Pass, taking water from Barranjak, taking water from Jugeong, pumping it uphill, and then pumping it back down the pipeline from Bynalong. We've looked at just about every solution that is possibly there. At the risk of the inevitable pun, pun, this has been a pipe dream of Yass Valley Council for a very, very long time. And thank God we now have the opportunity of actually locking it in perpetuity as a legacy program for Yass. I am absolutely staggered at the negativity, and this might not happen. It's our responsibility to make it happen. I urge you to vote for this motion, lock it in, and stop all the bickering that we've had over 30 years. We can take water from Barnja. Guess what? You apply the Dupano principle, you take your water supply below the sewage, but you don't take it below the sewage of 500,000 people who are currently pumping pathogens into potentially our water supply. We need to take it from above them and let gravity do its thing.
Thank you, Councillor Turner.
One question, if I may.
The debate is closed.
Isn't that the first time you've spoken?
That is, I close the debate.
It's all over Red Barrow.
Such a good question.
Close the debate. Sorry.
Okay, all those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Thank you, councillors.
What else was on the shopping list?
6:10, the investment borrowings report. There is a recommendation. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Abbey, do we have a seconder? Councillor Reid, any discussion? I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against? Declare it carried. 6:11, rate arrears. Again, it's just for noting. Move it, Councillor Reid, Councillor Potham, any questions? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Councillor Jones?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's me.
All those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. Community grants. 6:12. Going to be noted.
Yeah.
Councillor Turner, Councillor Reid. Prepared to vote? Questions?
Yeah,
Questions, or Cameron?
look, it's good to see this statement of the different sort of grants that we've been going for, and some of them we've been achieving, and it's quite a good way of setting it out. I'd just like to comment that when I was at the Bowning meeting and the director was there talking about the business month, it went over really well, and I thought it was, when you read the brochure, I thought it was really well presented, and I would think that that would be a very successful partnership with the Yass Business Council. Now, I know that the request that I had further on in the business papers was to look backwards to some extent on the what's been happening, and I'm just thinking that maybe that in the future that it might be possible to have a look at upcoming grant opportunities and their potential to help us fulfil the delivery program. For example, at the moment, the state government is making some $46 million available to support the introduction of FOGO services, the food, organic and green waste services throughout New South Wales. That funding round closes in November the 6th, so we're not in a situation to even contemplate applying for it, but there are 4 rounds, and the next round is in early, sort of, I think about March or May next year, but we're not ready for the November one, but we could be ready for the first quarter of 2023. And I know also that the local government arts and cultural project funding from Create New South Wales has a new round offering up to 200,000 Ks that closes in December. Councillor Posen, for example, might have an idea how this funding could serve Yass Valley and possibly fit in with our plans, if she's aware of that being a possibility. So maybe I'm suggesting that the quarterly reports that has been delivered today should look at the future a little bit as well, to alert councillors, to alert people in the community that there are further grant fundings occurring. And I'm sure the Director is doing that by going around to the local progress associations, etc., which she's doing at the moment on a continual basis, telling people about those sort of possibilities. So I think this is a good step forward. Maybe if we look to the future as well, we can sort of then allocate somebody within the staff to start sort of prioritising and start researching and getting the information for those projects, either internally within the organisation or in partnership with other members of the community. So I welcome this report.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick one. The Grant Guru site that we've subscribed to actually does that.
Yeah.
So if a community group subscribes to it, they can actually work out what filters they want on it, and then they will get advance notices of grants that are current or coming up. So the key thing, I think, is to encourage community groups to sign up to it. Our staff are looking at it constantly in terms of grants coming up, but we also do get direct notification from the grant, particularly state government and federal governments about grant programs that are coming up as well. So I think the Grant Guru has been a really good investment that we made for that subscription service.
If I could, through the Mayor, just advising the last line, the arts and cultural funding program from Create New South Wales is actually the round that you were talking about.
All right.
And Councillor Potham and I are actually working on a project for that.
I sort of assumed that was probably happening. I was using it as an example.
Any other questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. 6.13, winter and spring school holiday program. There's a recommendation.
Happy to.
Moved, seconded, Councillor Reid. Any discussion?
Comment of much thanks for our staff for organising such a diverse and exciting program. I was able to attend 3 of these and enjoyed themselves immensely, as did a lot of the other children there. And it was lovely, particularly to see an event such as the puppet show out at Bowning. So I was trying to remember the drink and show. It was a delight for toddlers through to the reluctant 11-year-olds who were actually quite engaged as well by the end of it. And in the village where this kind of program is not always very accessible, to have it there also brought members from the Yass and Murrumbateman community to Bowning, which was lovely to see.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to add to what Councillor Jones said, just congratulate everybody involved in getting these programs up and running. And I personally saw a lot of friendships being made and people meeting each other. There's quite a few of our school-age children who actually go to school in Canberra, so they don't necessarily know that many kids in Yass, and I saw lots of connections being made and, young people meeting each other. And I personally went along to the licorice and chocolate factory out at Jugiong. They needed an extra set of hands with working with children, so I put my hand up for that. And it was so amazing. We took a whole busload of young people out there and they had such a great time, and it was just such a great experience to be part of. I really enjoyed, being part of that as well, and such a well-run program and so many different experiences that covered lots of different age groups and interests. So yeah, well done to the staff and the funding bodies and everyone who made that happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Potham. Any further comments?
Could I just
Councillor Reid? Sorry.
I'd just like to add to all of that. One of the grants was for the Scouts to run a small thing for the young kids. And in fact, we ended up with the whole community getting involved, in particular the men shed, because they ended up making all the tracks and everything else. So it was good to see the guys actually getting off their bums and getting in to do something. So yeah, I'd like to have my Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Reid. Councillor Jones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to give the director an opportunity to make a comment, because I'm sure she was probably at as physically possible without a time turner, most of the events too.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to develop a program with the funding that the state government is providing. In addition to this, council's budget, community services budget has propped it up. All I can say is wait till January holidays.
Wonderful, wonderful. I can honestly say too that in spite of all the complaints that I've been getting recently, I haven't received a single complaint about that program, so congratulations.
Make people feel good.
Okay, 6,
Not delivering potholes.
You need to vote.
yes, that's right, we've got to vote. Okay, you're prepared to vote? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Okay, 6:14, IPART review. There's a recommendation again that be noted. Any questions? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Raby, Councillor Potham? No questions, no comments? Put the motion, all those in favour? Declare it carried. 6:15, advocacy paper for funding priorities. Any comments? Councillor Jones.
Just happy to move the motion.
Moved Councillor Jones, do we have a seconded Reid, Councillor Reid.
And note that the federal budget papers are down, and so we'll be certainly seeking some clarification on where we can find that commitment from Murray Bateman played out in the budget paper. And very exciting to see the $4.7 million locked in for the restoration of birthing and maternity services at Yass Hospital. Now we just have to convince them to upgrade the entire hospital along with it. But that's in our plan, and I was lucky enough to speak with the New South Wales opposition leader in Yass just yesterday, and it was exciting to hear him ask the question, can we do it on this site here at Yass Hospital? Can we go up? Do we need a greenfield site? So it wasn't a question of what are you talking about? He understood that planning needs to start now if we're going to deliver services for a community that's set to grow to 27,000, which I was very adamant that he understood how fast and exactly where we're going to grow, with most of that growth in Yass and Murray.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other questions, any other comments? Heard the vote? I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against, declare the motion carried.
Move 616 to 620 be moved to confidential, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burgess. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Councillor Cameron, thank you. Carried unanimously. Okay, the next item is notice of motion. Councillor Cameron?
Sorry, have you got that motion there? We're changing the motion if we can. Is that possible or?
It's a notice of motion, Mr.
We can
Motion and motion, then it should be debated on the motion as written.
Through the Madam Mayor, probably the easiest way to do it is amend it if it's substantially the same as what's already up there. But if it's different, I would say that you need to deal with this motion, and then if it's lost, then put a replacement motion there.
Right, hang on, I'm just trying to pull it up, sorry. I've got the motion.
Do you want to send it to Sheree?
Yeah, okay. It's spelled, sorry. sorry. Right? Sorry? There.
Your original.
Sorry?
Well, you've got to put your original and then we can tweak it.
All right, look, I'll move the original motion, it's up there on the board at the moment. Basically.
Do you have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Reid, thank you.
You didn't have to. Might have been easier not to.
He's not going to speak for him.
No. Well, it gives me a chance to speak and, well, you know how I like that. So let's have a quick look at it. Look, I'm the representative of Yass Valley Council. You don't have to time me, Mr. Mayor. I'm the representative of Yass Valley Council on the HumeLink consultative panel. It seems to me as though there's been an argument there all the time. There's a subcommittee there that was asked to look at undergrounding, okay? And there are a number of people on that subcommittee. And I think if I summarise it very quickly, they're extremely disappointed. There's been leaks, there've been things that have happened that haven't been given the approval of the subcommittee in terms of publishing information about the 10 times the cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the subcommittee's been looking at that. The consultative committee has been trying to really come to terms with the possibility of undergrounding. When you look at the Farmers Federation, they basically argue that this is a generational project and that it should be looked at like a farm that's been kept in the family for 5 generations, etc. This is going to be a project that has a generational influence, and you shouldn't be looking so much at the current cost of it, but how the cost equates over, say, 50 to 100 years. So the whole essence of undergrounding is up for grabs as far as I'm concerned. The problem I see with my original motion was pointing out that the state government has intervened and allowed transmission lines to go through the the Kosciuszko National Park. And we're talking about 8 kilometres and we're not talking about underground. So 8 kilometres, they're not going to allow 8 kilometres through a national park. I've got news for you, they're not going to basically do much in regard to the length of the HumeLink to Sydney in terms of undergrounding. So undergrounding's really at a loss at the moment, and I think we need to sort of be putting pressure. I talked to the mayor at the conference I was at over the last couple of days. I was talking to the mayor of Upper Lachlan. And she made the point is we've got to keep fighting. Okay, we've got to keep fighting for underground. Don't give up. Keep on going, and let's see what possibilities we can do. And it is expensive. It's going to be more expensive. HumeLink are under pressure from a cost angle and also from a time angle. So they're under a lot of pressure, but I've never got the feeling that HumeLink are interested in undergrounding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could suggest an amendment to the mover and the seconder, if they're amenable. And it's just slightly different up there to make it less work for our staff in terms of the candidates. So I propose we change it to Yass Valley Council writes to our state and federal members and poses an open question for candidates in the upcoming New South Wales election, seeking their position statement and support to advocate for undergrounding power lines for the HumeLink project to protect the interests of farmers, landowners, volunteer firefighting service personnel and the environment. The reason why I think we should pose an open question to candidates is to allow them to respond if they wish, rather than try and get our staff to write individually to candidates as they come up. So by all means, we should write to our federal and state members who are known immediately.
Point of order, I'm not quite certain what we're doing. I thought we were debating the original motion.
This has been put as an amendment, I guess the
So
question
we
is,
either
is it
start
So
on
we
that
could
one?
just-
substantially
Yeah.
the same?
This is a foreshadowed motion?
No, it's an amendment.
No, I'm
This is an
suggesting an amendment.
So councillor Jones is suggesting an amendment. For an amendment to be considered, it needs to be substantially the same as the original
Yeah.
motion, but not a complete opposite. So the question is that amendment of councillor Jones is substantially the same. On the face of it, it probably does look that way. The only thing I would say is remember your federal member is not coming up for a New South Wales election. So maybe you write to the federal member and pose an open question for all candidates in the upcoming New South Wales election.
Sorry, excuse me.
I have a couple of questions. I'm happy to second that, if that helps the debate as well. Can I ask some questions? Is that right?
Yeah.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not 100% sure who I'm asking the questions to, possibly Councillor Cameron or possibly the General Manager here. My first question is, from my understanding, the undergrounding is a big undertaking which also destroys a lot of land and just clears a great big path along the way. So it also takes out a lot of trees and habitat, and it has its own problems. It's not necessarily it's kind of a muchness of destroying the landscape.
Unless you send in the board.
Dare I say?
Yeah, unless you send in the board.
Okay, well, that was my first question. Is that how they do it? Because that's what I've
No.
No.
My second question is, how does this best help with our local residents here? Because I thought the original thing and what the speaker spoke about was also getting the lines moved. So I feel like we've got two different things here, because undergrounding is very different from getting the line moved around, the waterfall and the land and away from the houses and things. So to me, that's one thing that we're asking for, but then the undergrounding. So if we go forth with pursuing the undergrounding question and we focus on that, are we not representing our local community here in getting the lines moved as well? Because to me, that doesn't say that in that thing at all. So I feel like there's something being missed here. And if, you were talking before about Plan B, if we go ahead and we go all about the undergrounding and that gets rejected. It has been rejected in Snowy 2.0, I believe, and lots of areas like that. So if that gets rejected, does that mean the power line, that just goes ahead right through these people's property? So I think I just feel really confused on those couple of issues. So perhaps someone
I think there's two elements here. There's a big picture of undergrounding and there's a small picture of the impact
Oh,
yep.
on the local environment.
Yep. So just for me, I'd like to represent, the residents as best I can to help them in what they're trying to pursue. Obviously, the undergrounding is great, and like you said, it's a generational long-term thing.
Yeah.
But does the generational long-term thing help these people? That's all. And I said that's their questions. They're not. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'd like more information on that.
They are basically two separate issues,
Yeah.
really. So we should deal with this and then you can raise that at a later date
Okay.
with
Yep.
council. Okay.
Through Mr Mayor, the problem we've got at the moment is that we don't know what the proposal is. The application hasn't been made.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, if the application goes in and it's got undergrounding in there, well, then that might meet the requirements for some members of the community, but others may not, might have concerns. And we still don't know whether they would be prepared to move the lines or not. As I said early on, is that the problem you've got is that they put a preliminary proposal in, they get the requirements for their EIS from all the various government agencies, they start to work on those documents and they have a consultative forum to that oversees some of that. And then they fine tune their proposal and they change it, and that becomes the matter that is then assessed by the state planners, and decisions made on that, and we have an opportunity at that point in time to know what we're actually making comments on.
Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I have some real issues with both of these, with all of this. There's two types of there's two types of transmission. One is the main transmission where we have high density power lines, and the other is for small properties or small developments, divisions. I'm 100% in favour of the putting power underground for divisions such as Yass. Okay? And I embrace a lot of the ideas here, but I really felt out of my depth as to whether council should be going holus bolus behind this and saying this is what we want from a council point of view. And I also agree with some of Councillor Hawthorne's remarks there about is it in everybody's interest? Environmentally, it sounds really good, except that we have to bulldoze a whole swathe of land. It turns out that the power on a power line on a underground cable is about 25% of what it would be on a main line. In other words, it carries 25% less because of the ways of voltage and so forth. So if we are to replace a 100 megawatt line with an underground cable, we actually need 4 cables, not 1. These cables are meant to be 5 meters underground. They're not very, half a meter down. There's all sorts of issues about terrain. If we're going through a national park, I'm sure some of that terrain is going to be just solid rock. And how do we handle that? And when you're going through a dam or over a dam, going over the dam is relatively straightforward, but how do you carry it underneath? And there are all sorts of maintenance issues. It sounds pretty good, but how do you get into the middle of a national park when a line goes down and fix it? Apparently, it could be done in a few days if it's on a pylon, but if it's underground, they still have serious issues finding where the problem is in the first place, let alone fixing it. And so, while I'm saying that I'm really in favour of looking at the underground situation, I think we've got to be careful that we don't just say this is what council wants. We have to say maybe this is what council could be looking at and would like to do for some of our ratepayers, particularly the ones where we can put it underground and take it around the falls, for instance. So yeah,
So you're basically against the amendment and the motion.
Yeah, it sounds like that, doesn't it?
On the fence.
Yes, I'll say I'm against it.
You can see the problem.
I'm in there.
No.
Councillor
Thank
Jones.
you for
If I could speak in support of the amendment to assist Councillor Reid perhaps slide in a little way in our direction. We know we operate in an imperfect system. We've given a certain amount of time to advocate for something, and our journey to get to that information is never perfect, and we're always under the pump for time. Well, with the state election coming up in March, and with the state government that usually goes on holiday somewhere, I think after the 1st of November and might slide back into business by sometime after February, we don't have a lot of time. We have November and maybe a snitch of December if there's anyone still looking at their business papers coming through the state government. So it's important that we get clear, defined position statements before the state government election. It's true that they cannot direct Transgrid to do a certain thing, but if it is known that those in the positions of power shared our view, then at least we have a voice where it counts. We also have to value what we have here in Yass Valley. Yes, for a very long time we have been a conduit of power, but that does not mean that we are not also a destination for wineries, for the beauty of wee Jasper and our caves, and for our unique built and environmental heritage right here in Yass Valley. And we've seen tonight on Nambet's property a vision to turn her property into something that we can all share, and what a magical spot those falls are. So Councillor Pothen is right. We've got advocacy to do on lots of fronts. Let's take this particular bull by the horns and make sure we get a clear commitment to undergrounding, because this is going to be paid for by overseas companies that will reap the reward of money from us as New South Wales men and women for a very, very long time. So to say that it costs 10 times more is firstly, just ridiculous. And secondly, if it's only twice as much on a generational level of over 300 years, does it matter? Of course it matters if we've destroyed our environment, if we've put so much concrete into every single tower that has to be constructed, if we've allowed the risk of bushfire to destroy lives and homes and environment. We've seen what can happen in the southern area of our federal electorate. We do not want to see that repeated here in Yass Valley. Is it coming? Of course it's coming. It's HumeLink. It's going to come. Where it comes and how it comes, we have a voice. We're only small, but Yass Valley has a history of punching above its weight when it comes to advocacy, and this is one of those times where I think we need to get off the fence and give them a clear directive that we want to know where they stand on undergrounding, because our valley is worth it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any speakers against the amendment?
Just a question,
Councillor Jones.
Mr Mayor. I guess to the Chief Executive Officer in the first instance. What is the likely impost on staff time and staff energy in producing these letters that, to all intents and purposes, look to be a political question rather than something that's actually going to produce any effect?
The letter writing is not that difficult, but the thing that would consume our time is actually going through the documentation to provide a report to council about what we as planners think about it. This issue has actually been raised with at the joint organisation in Sydney with the ministers, particularly the Minister for Planning, basically saying two things. First of all, 28 days to go through some thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of technical reports is a big ask on not only council, but it's a big ask on people in the community. So there needs to be a better way of doing that. And one suggestion that we made was maybe we should be doubling or tripling the length of time it's on public exhibition. The difficulty for our staff is that we don't have experts in this area. So it means that we've got to try and get ourselves up to speed on what the issues are and are likely to be. So one of the things that the JO's talked about is there an opportunity to engage a planner, say from major projects in the department, to work with the councils in the JO on these sort of major projects, because they do consume a lot of time for staff, which detract us from the day-to-day planning of all those monthly DAs. For something like this, I would say that we need to be taking someone offline for about 4 weeks. So that means that's 4 weeks worth of processing all the other DAs that we've already got, and we've already got a backlog. Makes it really, really difficult for us to actually do a very thorough examination of this. I try to, when I look at these things, is try to focus on what are the key issues for this community. One is, are we totally opposed to it? Or are there things that we could get out of it that might benefit the community? And one thing that we've done on some of these major projects is look at developing a community enhancement scheme for the infrastructure if it's going through our backyard, to make sure that they're contributing to community projects throughout the local government area. We've always had concerns about, and even more so now, with construction activities impact on our local road network. It's very difficult on a transmission line where there are multiple towers that need to be constructed if it goes overhead, for instance. which probably means multiple access points into the site, unless we can look at a way of getting them off the road quickly and then into the sites, but that has other impacts as well. I share concerns about biodiversity impacts. We know that we've got lots of biodiversity issues right through our LGA. It seems that the government legislation on biodiversity is that if you look at destroying the biodiversity values of the countryside, it's not you've got to try and avoid it if you can, and if you can't, you pay the money. And certainly for Snowy Hydro 2, I think for going through Kosciuszko, what was it, about 8 Ks through there, they paid $10 million because they said they couldn't mitigate the impacts on the vegetation through the national park. And that's great for national parks, but that vegetation's lost. It's gone. It's over. So that's a concern. But yeah, look, I have a lot of reservations about our ability to be able to advise council thoroughly about the impacts of these. So I guess the approach that we've tried to take in the past is trying to narrow it down to what are the things that are most likely to impact on our community, and what's our response to those issues. So it's certainly not a 100% assessment. That's not our job. That's the Department of Planning. They're supposed to actually do the thorough assessment against all issues. I've suggested always that we focus on what are the impacts from our perspective, which is a cut-down version, but there'll inevitably be issues that we miss and we don't address, that sometimes communities criticise us for. But I don't think I'm going to be able to take somebody offline for 4 weeks to try and get their head around thousands and thousands of pages of consultant reports, highly technical, which is way beyond the capacity of most people who are in local government. It's a real impost on us.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, if I may I just ask a supplementary question on that. I'm going to preface it by saying that I am totally sympathetic for the members of HumeLink. I'll tell Councillor Cameron, I've already won the lottery because they decided not to go over the top of me. And I'm no longer affected by HumeLink. And I have great affinity with those who are, and we will be visually impacted regardless. Underground is obviously the solution, and obviously there are costs involved in it. And the supplementary question is there a better way for council to address this issue rather than writing a couple of letters that are going to disappear in the maelstrom of a federal state election?
Look, your candidates and federal member are not decision makers in this process. Really what you've got to do is you've got to get to your view to the decision makers via the assessment officers in the Department of Planning, because they're the ones that are going to be looking at this, and then they'll provide a report to probably the independent planning panel. It's more than likely going to be dealing with this one, or the Planning Assessment Commission. It certainly won't be council. It certainly won't be the minister. So I would say targeting the Department of Planning and the decision makers through their assessment process is probably most effective. I think raising it with political leaders that can't direct, even though it's a government utility, they can't direct it. They're supposed to act independently of government. But and look, I mean, if it was me, if I was the state member or the federal member, I'd be turning around and saying, well, hang on a minute, I can't really do anything. I can listen to concerns, and I might agree with them personally, but I'm not going to be able to direct the proponent to change their design. And in fact, that would probably be seen as inappropriate by the systems that have been set up to deal with the issues. But look, it's up to council. At the end of the day, I think if you want to ask the candidates and the federal member what their views on this matter is, well, that's just information that might help you with forming your views on it. That's nothing wrong with that. Directing them about your thoughts now without knowing what the proposal is well, I think I'd suggest to be cautious about that, because you don't know what they're going to do at this stage. They've only made suggestions. They might come back and say, we're going to underground the door.
Councillor Cameron.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll accept the amendment. On behalf of the mover and the seconder, I accept the amendment as it stands, please.
Makes it a lot easier. Yeah. Okay, speakers for or against the now motion.
Okay, I'll speak on behalf of this. I'm really disappointed that the General Manager or Chief Executive Officer is coming in on this from an operational point of view. I'm not sure why it's going to take 4 weeks. Look, what we're basically asking is let's find out what our representatives, and we've got people in this room who've basically said they've talked to some of these people, some of the representatives, our local members, and they haven't got a bloody straight answer. They don't know what they're thinking about it. I was at a conference on Tuesday, and Wendy Tuckerman was there and basically said how she was in the cabinet room looking at every issue from a local government perspective. Now, she is a decision maker. Now, I understand your point about utilities, but we're talking about politics here. And what we're talking about is basically saying to our community of farmers, people in Bookham in particular, people over there, Kim Turner's place, who've been badly affected, who are going to be badly affected by this. And what are we going to be saying? You know, from a large point of view, since I've been on the HumeLink committee, all we've been getting, whenever I talk to anyone about HumeLink, they don't know what I'm talking about. They think it's something to do with the freeway. Okay? HumeLink is going to have an impact on people. I think as a council, we need to basically be saying, we're doing our bit, and it may be insufficient, it may not work, we may have to go for a plan B, and we have to move things around. But we have got to show people that we are concerned about what's happening to them. Now, we know it's a major project. I'm a Green. I support renewables, and I know this is going to happen. But I think undergrounding should be really considered from a bushfire point of view in particular. That if you go underground, I don't think you're going to have transmission lines waving into the bush and setting the whole bloody thing on fire again. So I'm thinking that we've got to basically be saying to our community that we've got their interest at heart. And undergrounding is a possibility. I make the point, it's only a possibility, but we've got to try and get the decision makers, the people who are going to be in politics, the people who are going to be in Parliament to say where they stand on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Speakers are against the motion. Further speakers for the motion.
Just to say one thing. Just.
Let's jump out.
I have no issue if you all turn around and say, I told you so, it was going to be undergrounding. I have no issue with that. That is an egg I would love to see on my face. But just in case it's not, let's get our voice out there now, ahead of the curve, to let them know that this is something that our community deserves, something the environment deserves. And yes, it may cost a little more with the dollars, but just think about where those dollars are coming from. This is international investment in a project. They intend to make money. And if that is at the cost of the amenity of Yass Valley and the safety of Yass Valley and the cost to our environment, it is on us to sound the alarm now and let people know.
The only comment I'd make in that respect is they've already projected electricity charges to go up by 50%. If it's all right to say it's foreign money, but they're going to recover it.
Yes.
Okay, everyone.
Can I say something else? Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that while I'm in support of what's happening here, I don't think this motion actually does what we'd like to do. I just feel like it's not quite hitting the nail on the head. So I would like to see what the impacts are on the community, and I think that actually hitting the actual decision makers at the Department of Planning would be perhaps a better use of staff time. And if we've got a chance to make this different, I just think there's a better way of going about it than, like you said, pulling in people in expertise in things that are sort of, that this is quite a complicated issue. So I just wanted to say that while I'm actually speaking against the motion right now, it's because, sorry,
I've
the
got a
amendment,
question- I've got
sorry.
a question for councillor Pothen. If she would like to add to the motion that now is an opportunity because you can accept it as another amendment.
To Councillor Jones, I think my amendment is basically to scrap the whole lot and start again, and I think taking on board what the CEO has suggested, his advice there rings quite true to me, and while I'd like to support this thing, I think that the way we're doing it doesn't sound like we're hitting the nail on the head. I think we're just throwing things around in the air, is how it feels. I think there's a better way to do it. And that's a whole nother sentence, so perhaps this is something I could bring back to the next meeting in a different format or something, and I would do a back to the drawing board thing. So I just wanted to say that. I think there's a better way to get action.
Just ask the CEO to clarify his remarks. I think he was referring to the original motion. Was the substance of his comments rather than this one.
Look, I think the way the motion's worded at the moment is that you're asking for their position, but you're telling them that this is what we want. I mean that's so it's somewhat loaded in terms of the answer you're after, but but you can then maybe it's not asking an open question, maybe it's making a statement that you believe that undergrounding is the best solution from an environmental bushfire management perspective. Now you're callous to the mast, hedging around it. But it's up to you. Your motion, it's not mine.
Any further comments?
Look, you will get a chance to look at the DA and then make some decisions at that particular point in time.
Be too late by then. It will be too late.
Well,
They have refused DAs,
Through you, Mr.
just as you guys have.
True.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I might actually take up the General Manager's advice because I'm always open ears. Point 2 of the motion with a further amendment, if the mover and the seconder are amenable, to also write to the Department of Planning seeking their support for the undergrounding of Humelink. The clock is ticking on with state election in March. I'm just thinking, well, it's not. I know it's not perfect. Usually, when it's perfect, it's too late.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's going to be a decision before the election. No, it's they haven't even drafted their EIS, which is a mandatory requirement for them to actually produce.
I guess through you to answer that, it allows people to vote for people who support the position of undergrounding. I know the decision to underground may not be decided in that, but it helps our community know who's got their back.
I'll accept the amendment on behalf of the mover and the seconder. Is that okay with you? It is, let me put it this way. Let's go for it.
I wouldn't mind saying something about it.
Yes,
I agree with the General Manager's point here. What we're saying on one hand is that we're seeking their position statement on what we should be saying is, what is your statement on whether we go for underground or above ground? As opposed to saying, we're seeking your position on it and we want you to support and be an advocate for. So we're actually trying to push them into making a statement which is, supportive of those who want the underground, and I don't have an issue with that. But I think if we change the wording to, what is your position on whether we should have underground or not?
Full stop.
Full stop, yeah. And then maybe right into the Department of Planning, so, looking for more information. This is my issue that on at this level, put it underground, but when I'm looking at some of the issues involved and the cost, we talked about cost. These people who are putting this investment in will want their money, they want their pound of flesh. We know that, they're capitalists, that's why they're there. And so if the cost is, I've heard costs of 14 times more in an article that I read, and it was written by a doctor who's been looking into this sort of thing. That's a substantial cost to put that in. And that cost will be clawed back. Somebody has to pay for it, and it's not going to be the investors. They will want their return. They will want their money back. So we really need to get it right where it's advantageous to go across the land and where it's advantageous to put it underneath. I'm happy both ways. I think asking for the members their opinion on where they stand on this issue is a good thing. But I think for me, I really need to sit down and get more information. I think the General Manager mentioned something that I haven't even thought about with the overhead power lines, is you need access points. This means more roads to get to those access points, whereas if you do it underground, you just go straight up the underground thing. So that's something else I would like to think about. I'm more than happy to support a motion along the lines of asking the federal members, but I think like Councillor Porthen said, we need something else, so a different step, and maybe it's a different motion we need to bring before council about how we go forward in the right way, procedurally and operationally, to get to the right people and see if we can make a difference.
Okay, do we want to have another go at it?
Can I just say one thing?
No, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Just practicing for the future.
I'm up there. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add though, with adding point 2, which did nail part of what I was talking about, seeking support from the Department of Planning. The other bit that we're missing, however, though, is we were also talking about moving, getting the lines moved. So to me, like this is really foggy arguments going on here, because that is in direct support of undergrounding. It's not talking about getting the lines moved. So to me, what the speakers were talking about and this actually are two different things. And so if we were writing to the Department of Planning seeking their support for undergrounding, but if say that fails, shouldn't we also be seeking like a conversation about where the lines go? Because I thought that was the original thing of what the people were talking about from the residents' point of view. So for me, I don't feel prepared to vote for this because I do support it, but there's lots of bits missing. And I think personally, I'd like to do more research on undergrounding, because what I've heard of undergrounding is it destroys a lot of property, but I could be wrong. So I've only sort of read some articles and I've had some conversations with people, but this to me has such a big impact on the community that I personally would like more information before I vote on something like this. So,
If I could answer one of the questions that Councillor Poppin has raised.
Briefly, Councillor.
I'll be super brief. Because we don't have the actual submission from HumeLink, we don't know exactly where the lines will be. There's been proposed lines, so I think to advocate at that point will be in the future. There'll be a future point for us to do that. Getting a statement position out of members in this moment before a state election is a short timeline. which is what we're trying to extract out of here. And also, I guess, give early warning to the Department of Planning that we support undergrounding. It's my understanding that once you commit to like the above, that it's got to be all the way.
Yeah,
So
either one or the other.
it's one or the other.
Yeah.
So it can't be a little bit here and a little bit there, is my understanding, because the cost of the nodes is like a blowout. But that's just what we've picked up through these information sessions with Transgrid. So I just want to reiterate, I know it's not perfect. It's a step in our advocacy process, and I look forward to learning more from Councillor Poppin as she does her research, as I'm sure we will go around the room as we get closer to crunch time on what HumeLink's going to look like and where it's going to be.
Okay, any further discussion? Before I put the vote on, I might just ask the CEO to tell us how he's going to deal with it, if it's carried.
Well, if it's carried, it's just simply writing to the federal member and writing to prospective candidates or candidates that come forward that this is what council's determined.
Okay,
And that's the simple thing. The second, I mean, the second part there, that's routine. We can actually just send that off to the Department of Planning and saying that this at the present time, we've got a preference for undergrounding of power for the HumeLink project. That's our submission at this point in time. Once the EIS comes out and it goes on public exhibition, you would have all the opportunity to actually look at the detail and then determine whether you modify your position one way or the other. That's in the future. But yeah, look at the initial bit is just writing a couple of letters.
okay, prepare to vote. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? I declare the motion carried.
Thank you.
Questions without notice, 8.1. Questions have been answered, any comments? Okay, thank you for that. 9.1, minutes of the General Manager's Performance Review Committee meeting.
What are we on?
9.1. Oh, I jumped.
Any other questions have been asked?
Oh, yeah. We've got the answers to the questions, no comment.
Which one?
What are they talking about? Questions on notice. 8.1 and 8.2.
Oh, sorry.
No, not 8.2. 8.1 we've got that notice, yeah.
You got an answer?
Well, I have questions about 8.2.
Okay, well, that's what I asked.
All right, well, you weren't making yourself clear.
Well, I apologise for that.
I accept your apology.
The questions were asked on notice, the answers were provided.
Okay.
So, do you have a supplementary question or?
Oh, comment. Okay.
Don't wreck the place, councillor.
Sorry?
I'm sorry for upsetting you, councillor. Can someone go and pick it up?
Threw a piece of wood at the minute.
Just check who I am. Right, councillor Cameron. Look, the whole thing about the consultation about the flag is a controversial issue. I realise that, and in some ways I feel a little bit reluctant in raising the issue, but our community strategic plan says that our community is to be informed and engaged in decision making. A number of people have come to me and basically said, I won't use the abbreviation, but what's going on? What's going on with the consultation? I can't answer that question, particularly what the overall plan is and the possible timeline. So what I'm seeking is not a couple of the initial parts of this consultation process, but I want it basically fleshed out, what the consultation process is, what the timeline is, so that I can talk to people in the community to say, where are we heading on this particular issue? The other comment I want to make is that on the 30th of August, the General Manager emailed the councillors that staff are now responsible for implementing the decision of council. However, on the 10th of October, in response to an email from a resident, Councillor Turner suggested I have already instigated that process, meaning the consultation, through the committee I chair. I'm a little bit surprised that a councillor is now saying publicly that he is instigating the consultation process, which he may be doing, when in actual fact the General Manager basically said it's in-house. So I'm sort of not clear what the situation is in regard to consultation. So I'm saying, where are we heading and what are the steps that we are going to take? My understanding at some stage was that perhaps there might be, in order to satisfy some of the people who voted for the rescission, that we were going to communicate to everyone in the council area about what they thought about the issue. So I would have thought that that might have required some sort of survey or whatever. So we're trying to flesh out what's happening, where we're going, what the steps are, and what's the timeline. You know, from my perspective, the way the motion has read, take forever to do the consultation. But I don't think we're being very transparent with the community. We've got to basically be saying, what are we doing? And even what's been presented as a report, it's saying there, we've contacted the RSL, we've contacted the Indigenous Committee, we've contacted the Land Council. There's no response, there's no indication. Have we got a response back from any of those? Or not at this stage. So that gives me another piece of information that I've just learned, that we haven't really, and I believe from the Indigenous Committee minutes, that there's a planned meeting, and yet we haven't even got that basic sort of response back yet. So I'm basically asking for clarity for the benefit of the community, and to also basically say, to inform the community where we're heading with this. Thank you.
Through Mr Mayor, the 3 dot points there are reflective of the council resolution. The first thing was to write to the Yass RSL sub-branch and the Honourable Local Aboriginal Land Council. I wrote to both of those organisations on the 30th of September and said it would be great if we could have your comments by the end of October.
Yeah.
It's not the end of October yet. I have received a response from the RSL sub-branch indicating that they will be putting a submission in, and it was just really acknowledging that they'd received the letter. The Honourable Local Aboriginal Land Council made comments at the Consultative Committee meeting that they were somewhat offended by the email that I sent them. I'm not sure why, but they just said we're not happy. The Aboriginal Consultative Committee was concerned about any online survey and hard copy survey. That what they were concerned about was that the process could be hijacked by people outside of the LGA. Yep. And they were very concerned about that. But by the same token, they also said that there are people with strong connections with Yass Valley that don't live in Yass Valley. So how do we accommodate those? So the suggestion was, why don't we have a working party comprising of a representative from the committee, the RSL and the Land Council to discuss the format of the survey. And so that's what they're doing. They also indicated they are very concerned about doing it too quickly or doing it too slowly. But they didn't give any clarity about what that meant. So at this stage, the first 2 dot points are underway, and I'm expecting responses from those. And the working party of the Aboriginal Consultative Committee with other representatives are going to be meeting next Friday. So hopefully we'll have some direction. We'll get some direction about what we do and how we go about doing the survey. My comments to the Consultative Committee was that think they're underestimating the views of people in the Yass Valley community.
Sorry, you
They're underestimating the views of people in the Yass Valley community. They were concerned that this will lead to a anti-flag response.
okay.
There are people that can manipulate any consultation process. So, the comment that I made was that there was a minor rezoning process down at Wollongong that received 40-odd thousand submissions because some smart person generated an online submission that people could lodge with council, but what it did was generate about 10 different responses, basically saying the same thing, and that's why they ended up with 45,000 submissions which the council staff had to go through. So they were concerned with those. The Aboriginal community were saying that that's a concern that we have, that the process might actually get hijacked by people with an extreme view, with an extreme agenda, rather than us gauging what the local community, the Yass Valley community, wanted to say. So I didn't want to push the consultative committee to come up with a particular solution. It was easy for us to say, turn around and say, why don't you work on this collectively? Put your heads together and see if you can actually come up with something that would guide us. Because we're the ones charged with the responsibility of actually doing the survey. That's what you asked us to do.
Cameron?
Just a question, through you, Mr Mayor. The RSL responded with a submission, were they?
Not yet. They said, thank you,
They
and we'll be putting a submission in. So they've acknowledged that they've received the email.
So, yeah. But they weren't asked to put in a submission necessarily, were they?
Yes. I wrote to them and I said, this is the council position. Council wants us to undertake some consultation. You're one of the stakeholders.
Right.
Can you give me some advice about what your organisation's views are?
Okay.
So they were invited to make a submission. They've simply acknowledged that they've received it and indicated we will be putting a submission in. Haven't got it yet, but still a few days left of the month. But again, I'm not going to be hard and fast about it. If it comes in, in first week of November, so be it.
Next year.
Or if they come back and say, look, we need more time,
Yeah.
well, they'll get more time.
Councillor Turner.
If I may, Mr Mayor, there seems to be some suggestion from Councillor Cameron that there was some impropriety in me instigating this event. I was the one that put it onto the agenda for the committee. I was the one who introduced the topic to the Aboriginal Consultative Committee. Therefore, I instigated it. I don't resile from that fact at all. I was acting under instructions from council in getting a consultation process underway that should have been undertaken before the event, not after.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. So Councillor Turner accepts blame.
I don't think that's what he was doing.
Okay, everyone happy now?
Thank you.
Right. 9.1, minutes of the General Manager's performance review.
That's all confidential.
Moving to that. Confidential.
I just say I've got an interest in this one, but that's obviously what's in confidential.
So do you leave the room before we vote?
I'm really leaving the room for the actual report.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so we now move, someone like to move, we move into closed session?
Just for that.
We have.
We've got all the minutes.
We're too excited.
It's not good for you. It's not good for you.
That's right.
Did we move that in a bundle? No, okay.
Ah,
From where?
Through you, Mr Mayor, happy to move 9.1.
9, right.
Goes into
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Number 3, minutes of the Aboriginal Consultative Advisory Committee.
We're going to do 9.2 next.
9.2, okay. Yass Soldiers Memorial Hall Advisory Committee. Councillor Abbey, we have a seconder?
Yep.
Councillor Potham, any questions? Any comments? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Declare it carried. Aboriginal Consultative Advisory Committee, moved Councillor Turner. Seconded, Councillor Reid. Any comments, Councillor Turner?
No, I think it says as it's work in progress on the welcome, the acknowledgement of country, and work in progress on the consultative. Flag.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Sustainability Advisory Committee, moved Councillor Cameron. Seconded Councillor Reid. Any comments, Councillor Cameron? If not, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Okay, we now have to deal with confidential matters. Councillor Turner, do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones? Jones, we move now into closed session. To members of the public, thank you for your attendance. Good evening.
Thank you.
It's just a.